Today I want to talk about junk food. It is literally the elephant in the room. And junk food of all sorts become so incredibly normalised in our lives. It is everywhere. Junk food, when you fill up your car with petrol, you run the gauntlet of junk food. It is how we celebrate with cakes. It's how we commiserate with ice cream. Junk food is everywhere. And it's now normalised to go to fast food outlets after kids have done sport and pick up burgers and deep fried chips. And this has become so normal that when we only do it once or twice in a week, the interpretation is that that's quite good. And I'm not wanting to be harsh. I don't want us to be beating ourselves up about this, but there's got to be a move away from thinking that that's okay. And the reason that it's so important that we evolve and progress our feelings about junk food is that these ultra-processed meals are so heavily engineered to be hyper-palatable. The mix of fat, salt, sugar just doesn't appear in nature. And it's so palatable and so moreish that we can eat way beyond what our satiety signals would normally be telling us when it's time to stop. Our reward system, our brains, on MRIs, it has been shown, if we scan our brains when we eat these ultra-processed foods, our reward areas in our brains light up. And that reward area lighting up is our dopamine, and dopamine is our desire-seeking chemical. So it makes us more wanting and it makes us desire more of the same again and again. But like with any addiction, there's never enough. So you don't get addicted to apples. You don't get addicted to whole food. But we've now got an engineered type of food that acts like a drug, and our body sees it as a highly desirable, addictive substance. And we need to interact with food differently now. We need to recognise how we behave around junk food, and we need to recognise it for what it is. It's a highly addictive substance that we can't get enough of. So this dopamine pathway that we're seeing lighting up on MRIs is telling us that there's a desensitization happening. We need more of the same rewards, so we're overeating. Our craving cycles, this memory of pleasure, drives that pleasure seeking. Now I want to move on to a little bit of social awareness. Social cues and cultural programming are really important here. Junk food is marketed as fun, fast, freeing, collaborative. You see the adverts about mates getting together and sharing junk food. It's used in celebrations, in rewards, in stress relief. And we grow up associating it with comfort and nostalgia. And I want you to have a think about things like school fundraisers, the school sporting canteen, the hospital vending machines. We're flooded with these messages that normalise unhealthy eating. And it undermines our healthy wanting of healthy eating. Whole foods, unlike our ultra-processed foods, unlike whole foods, are cheap and addictive, and they're everywhere. They're easy to grab, they're easy to eat, and they're really hard to stop eating. And this cycle of dependence is reinforced, and we're doing it with our kids and we're doing it with our society. And I'm sounding probably a bit more radical than I need to be, but if we could just make an adaptation, if we could shift a bit more towards natural occurring foods, plant-based foods, naturally occurring foods, they stabilise our blood sugars, reduce the spikes, reduce the crashes. It lowers our insulin. It restores our dopamine balance. When we sit with an element of discomfort, stress, anxiety, rather than feeding it with comfort food, we learn to balance that cortisol. Our body learns to manage the stress rather than if we use a substance, be it food, be it alcohol, to manage the stress. If we can manage the stress in other ways, we will release our dependence. But also, all this fresh, whole food can rebuild our gut biome. And we need it now. We need it to communicate with our brain and our mood centers. So it's more than just choosing well. It is recognizing that some of our choices are made for us, but we've got to rebel a bit against them. Socially, we've allowed this to happen in society where we have cheap and nasty food everywhere. And it's making it hard for each generation to make good choices. So I want you now, going forward, to notice when junk food is around you, not with guilt, but with a curiosity of, God, it's everywhere. I can see it now. But with a mindfulness of, I'm not going to respond. But I want you to ask, is this my biology? Is this a social reaction? Is this an engineered reaction? And can I sit with it? Can I choose something a bit better? And it might mean for the first little while having an apple, a banana, an orange in your bag that you can go to. It might be having some cashews in your bag that you can reach for. Whole foods will help you come home to a better balance and give your brain and your body space to regulate and reset from all that has been wired with this ultra-processed environment that we're living in now. So remember, we are not broken. Our cravings are not a personal failure. It is part of evolution that we have them. And it's our biological response to this unnatural food system that we find ourselves in. But if we can please choose some whole food, if we could just upgrade to that healthier food, we will start a little quiet revolution. And that is what the next 20 or so days is about. It's about having a quiet food revolution with yourself and the knock-on effects that will have to those around you. Look at your current choices of food. Look at what you are genuinely eating. And are you saying to yourself that these are okay, when in actual fact, it is still a greater amount of ultra-processed food than we need, than we should be working with. Give it a go, give it a whirl, give it a try to recognise the ultra-processed foods in our lives and to challenge yourself to upgrade to better. Patients will often tell me, I get a hypo. If I don't go a long period of time, I feel like I'm hypo. You check the blood sugars, and for the vast majority of patients, they're not hypo. Some might be in a little transition period where you are developing insulin resistance and your insulin levels are going up, but you're still able to use the insulin to get the blood sugar or the sugar from the blood into cells. However, on the whole, we're just so used to those spikes of blood sugar that when it comes to having a low blood sugar, it just feels so different to us. Ghrelin is our hunger hormone. So it's often elevated in people sort of consuming high sugar, low fiber diets. It's also anytime that we try to resist overeating. So when we try to go without, when we go on restrictive diets, when we want to eat but tell ourselves not to, this ghrelin hormone goes high and it stays high for years. So these fluctuations also impact another hormone called cortisol. So cortisol is our stress hormone. This leads to more emotional eating. So when you're stressed, when you're busy, and you're feeling those slumps that you've got from having had processed foods or ultra-processed foods, that cortisol that you've got pumping, you eat, dopamine relaxes you, and that cortisol is responded to by further cycles of eating. It is wicked. Cortisol, being a stress hormone, also increases your insulin. And again, that vicious circle. So yes, it is hormone related, but it's not the simple hormones that you think it is. It is far more complex than that. Your leptin, this is your satiety hormone. So this is the hormone that tells us that we're full. It becomes less effective the more weight we gain, the more processed foods we eat, and the more adipose tissue that we put down. This leptin resistance means that we stop telling ourselves that we're full. We don't get the signal. Insulin, as we've mentioned again and again, with ultra-processed foods and fast release blood sugar results, we have insulin spikes and crashes that make you hungrier, make you moodier, and it makes you prone to overeat. Environmentally, our environments now are engineered to have this ultra-processed food on our doorsteps, and in a social setting, it is everywhere. It is everywhere. So it's about not just the recognising of what is ultra-processed foods, it's recognising that having it in our lives is really normalised, and having it once or twice a week is normalised. But those episodes are doing a lot of damage.